All right. This is probably going to be, of all the teams that I've done so far, the strangest I feel about any team. Because this team is just absolutely all over the place. And I really don't know how I feel, but I'll still tell you what I think. Um, First off, they didn't get. I like to start whenever I'm talking about teams. Today's team's the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, you see it in the title or whatever. But they're not getting any new branding moving to Vegas from Oakland. But their new stadium, I really like. Obviously, the inside of it's going to be really nice, but I just really want to compliment how nice the outside of it looks because I've seen what the outside of it's supposed to look like once it's done, and I think the exterior of the stadium looks amazing, especially compared to the new Los Angeles stadium, which I think the exterior of that stadium is kind of ugly, especially with the shape they chose. Uh, yeah, I just like how the new stadium's gonna look. All right, now into season notes. They went 7-9 last year, and boy, it was up and down for them. Tyrell Williams was a very good acquisition for them last season, no doubt about it. I really like how he played. He was very integral to their offense. I loved when the Raiders played in the Coliseum during baseball season, just because there was an element of having the dirt on a football field that made it so interesting, and I really loved to see that. So I mean, I just loved whenever they were playing in the Coliseum. I mean, if you think about it, ever since I started watching football, uh, basically when the Raiders had Jamarcus Russell for the first time, that's when I started watching football. Uh, they haven't had like much success at all. But even with that said, whenever I saw like a Raiders game on TV, especially if they were the home team, it was cool to click onto it because it was like it always had a cool environment with their fans and stuff. So it was fun. It's always fun to catch a Raiders game when you can. I really like how Josh Jacobs is a powerful runner. It's always a joy to watch any sort of powerful runner in the NFL. Is Dwayne Harris the most underappreciated return man in NFL history? Quite possibly, but he missed most of the season anyways, and he's not back on the team this year. I really like a one play. I just love picking out plays from the season that I see that are so fun. The a play action power look to the right side of the um, basically just a fake run to the right, and then a screen quickly back to an isolated receiver with a tackle out in front. I really like that look. I feel like I feel like more teams should use that because it looks, and I feel like they could utilize it more often because I just like how it creates space for a receiver with one of the best players on the team, hopefully, in a left tackle out in front of him. Josh Jacobs could have been forced. Oh, he was running against the Chiefs, and he got up the sideline, and it's one of those plays where it's like, the defender obviously has the angle on him, and he's just gonna run out of bounds here. But no, instead Josh Jacobs lowers his shoulder and head and just puts it straight into the Chiefs defender, and forces him to tackle him, not going out of bounds. And then I just wrote "workhorse" in all caps because it's so fun to watch people do that type of stuff. I really enjoyed Josh Jacobs last season, if it isn't obvious. Um, Wow, Eric Harris. Why did no one tell me about him? He may be one of the most underrated safeties in the league. He played extremely well last season, and I'm pretty sure that's only been like one season that he's done that, but he had a really, really good year last year. Um, and speaking of their safeties, I remember watching the first game of the season last year with John Abram. I think he went either in the first or second round to them last year. I think he was a late first round pick, if I remember correctly, but he could have been second round. And I just remember how impressed I was with him and how he was playing. And it was only the first game of the season. I was like, holy cow, this guy is going to be a potential candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then, of course, in that same game, he gets injured and he's out for the year. So that was pretty disappointing to see because I was like, wow, this Josh Jacobs guy and this John Abram guy are both really fun to watch, but we only got to see Josh Jacobs, obviously. Talking about more of the rookies from last season, Max Crosby is looking to be a long-time good pass rusher. I mean, this guy was really good last season. And you look at Cleveland Farrell was the top pick, so it's weird that Max Crosby had so much success. But really, Cleveland Farrell didn't have that many. He didn't have a terrible season. Like for a rookie, he definitely could improve to what they were thinking. of him where he got drafted so highly. But Max Crosby definitely had the better rookie year. He was really impressive. Foster Moreau, impressive reception. So he's the number 2 tight end on this team, and it felt really weird because anytime he was making plays, they seemed a lot more impressive than when Darren Waller was making plays. But I mean, then I looked at the reception totals at the end of the season, and it's Foster Moreau has 21 and Darren Waller has 90. So I mean, I don't know. I guess they definitely think Darren Waller's the better player, but honestly, I was more impressed with Foster Moreau and what he did. Seemed like Darren Waller was really schemed into a lot of things. Once again, another note on Josh Jacobs. Even if he has no momentum, he runs powerfully. Like, he put a stiff arm into one guy that was just absolutely insane. He was, like, standing straight up, off balance, like, in a position to really take a big hit if a defender got the opportunity, and instead he just lays one of the nicest stiff arms ever and gains a few more yards on the run. It was just cool. They run a 4-wide set at one point in the season down around the goal line, and there are 3 tight ends on the field. So when you're thinking about personnel packages, you run 3 tight ends onto the field, and then you line up in a four wide set. That looks pretty. That's going to confuse the defense and get their personnel all mismatched. So it ended up in a Raiders touchdown. So I really liked that play call. Also, Derek Carr just loves throwing the ball to tight ends all season. Like I said, Darren Waller had 90 receptions. Hunter Renfrow, great slot receiver. I really liked when they picked him last year. I don't know why. I was just really into the idea of him being a good slot receiver for whatever team would pick him, and the Raiders got him. Yep, I said that. Oh, they had a fake punt at one point where it was a fullback. The fullback took the snap and then tossed it forward to a tight end for a reverse on a fake punt, which was absolutely tremendous, and they picked it up and got like a ton of yards after that. And then after that point, that was when everything just went all over the place. This team was up for playoff contention in Week 10, but was still competing with the Bengals in the fourth quarter. The Bengals were 0-9 at this point, and the Raiders were 5-4. I mean, they were in the heat of the wild card race, and they're just letting the Bengals compete with them for some reason. Also, this is around the time that they acquired Zay Jones. I just want to mention that. He didn't do a ton for them last season, but I just want to mention that because I want to say good luck to Zay Jones because he's one of my favorite players. And then the next week, they go to the Jets, and they just get absolutely obliterated, still in this playoff race. They finished the season, the last 6 games of the season, they won 1-5, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that is not the way you want to end the season. I mean, Carr got benched against the Jets defense. That was tough. Also, every time they seem to have a 4th and 1 this season, they called a fullback dive. A little interesting. Maybe you want to change that up a little next season. I mean, it always worked, so I guess I can't knock them for it always working. But yeah, there's a weird play against the Titans where and by the way, the Titans game too. Like, holy cow, that game just went. They were in that one too. They still heat of the playoff race. It's like 21. It's either 21-21 or 28-21 in the fourth quarter, and the game just falls apart, and they just completely fall out of it. And the Titans both really needed that game, but the Raiders were at home, but the Titans just in the fourth quarter took over. I mean, this specific play part I wanted to mention was there's a play where Darren Waller catches like a deep crossing route, probably 15 to 20 yards down the field. Big play for the Raiders. I'm sure all the fans were extremely hyped. But the weird thing was at the end of the play is Kevin Byard was about to tackle him, but it just looked like Darren Waller like curled up like he was extremely scared of Kevin Byard, but he wasn't in like a position to lay him out. It was just like a very casual tackle, and it looked really awkward, so I didn't know it was up there. And then the very next play, they throw the ball to Darren Waller again in the flat on the left side of the field, and somebody punches the ball out of his arms, and it's returned for a touchdown. I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. So he looks like he's scared of the defense, and then the next play he catches the ball and immediately fumbles, and it's returned for a touchdown. And that was basically when the game was over, and the Titans knew that they were going to take that one. So we had the Bengals like joke of a game that they let them stay in. They get wrecked by the Jets. Oh, and I didn't even mention the Chiefs game that they were in where they just got absolutely slaughtered. And then the games in the Titans where it was close in the fourth quarter and they just let them run away with it. Next, also, they were up 10 against the Jags with 6 minutes left and they somehow managed to lose the game in regulation. The end of the season was just absolutely atrocious for them. And the sad part is, what happens at the end of the season usually tends to be the carryover to the next season. It's really sad, but I think we're seeing a lot of losses at the end of the season here, and we may see a lot of losses for this team next season. They beat the Chargers in a meaningless game, but then they lose a heartbreaker to the Broncos to end the season, and it was just a really sad way for the Oakland Raiders to go out. Honestly, it is a new beginning though. But the key to that is that it's a beginning because it's the start of something. Nothing is going to be perfect at the start, and I don't think this team is going to be near perfect. Uh, Derek Carr, good placement on short passes most of the year, but I wasn't sold on any of his. Uh, I didn't see any medium or deep throws that really made me go, "Wow, this guy is for sure the franchise QB." Um, Eric Harris is the defensive MVP. It, he just made so many plays for them throughout the year. I don't even think it's even in question. He had the second most tackles on the team behind Tahir Whitehead, but Tahir Whitehead is now gone, and so I mean, team leader in tackles is gone. Kind of weird, but they have a lot of new linebackers too. Max Crosby, 16 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. That's a great year once again. Farrell, not as great, but I mean he could really improve. Then Maurice Hurst and Jonathan Hanklins complement each other on the interior really well. Um, I just, I mean, the edge play seemed to be much better than the interior play, but like I said, Hurst and Hankins complement each other well. I was really surprised to learn that Derek Carr only threw 8 interceptions last season. So I guess with what I'm saying, I mean he's kind of, like I said, he wasn't throwing anything crazy that was making me go, wow, what an amazing throw or anything, but he's not turning the ball over either, so that's a good thing. Here's a stat that really makes me think they're also not going to have a great season next season. 24th in points for and against. Wow, that means I guess 25th would have to be they would have to be in 25th to actually fall into the bottom quarter of the league for both total points for defense and offense. But I mean, 24th is literally right on the cusp. You can basically say that they're in the bottom quarter of the league for points for and against. That's bad. Injuries last season, as I said, John Abram, he missed the entire year. Isaiah Crowell missed like the entire year. No, he did miss the entire year, but I didn't even know he was on the team, and now he's a free agent, and I don't think anyone's going to sign him since he was injured all year. Dwayne Harris missed most of the year last year, and he's not re-signed. Gabe Jackson missed time early in the season, and Carl Joseph missed time at the end of the year. But Carl Joseph also is gone, so it's really weird to see a lot of these guys leaving that they didn't even really have a chance to play for them last year. Uh, yeah, Gabe Jackson's the only one here that actually is sticking with them as far as I know. And the other guy I mentioned is just Nate Peterman because it's really sad that he was on IR all year. It's really sad. I don't even know what he was injured with. I just saw that he was on injured reserve all year and thought that was sad. All right. So, if there's any hope for this team, it's that there's a crazy amount of transition that they're going to have this year because I mean, they just got new guys all over the place. Okay. Actually, first I'll go with who they lost. Tahir Whitehead left the team. Daryl Worley's gone. Vontez Burfict, Isaiah Crowell, Mike Glennon, their backup QB, Carl Joseph, and DeAndre Washington. I mean, none of those guys seem like crazy losses to me except for Tahir Whitehead. And I would say Vontez Burfict as well, but obviously no one's going to give him another chance in the league. So that's not terribly surprising. Yeah, I mean, that's just a bunch of guys lost. And then they have a bunch of acquisitions, too. like a bunch of guys added to the team. This was definitely the longest list. And also, if I missed any guys and guys that they left the team or joined the team, it was just crazy looking at all their transactions lists. I mean, I'm not including everybody on these lists. I'm including the guys that I consider important. But I think they had to have the longest transaction list by far of any team I've looked at so far this offseason. So first guy most recently that they acquired is Prince Amukamara. He'll be a solid player for them. I mean he won't be anything crazy, but he's been a solid player everywhere he's gone. Next, I couldn't believe this, but they signed Demarius Randall when it seems like they have no need at safety. But then I looked at it, and he's only getting paid $1.5 million this season for 1 year. And I was like, okay, I guess if you're the Raiders and you're looking at this, you're like, our safety position's already loaded. But if we're only giving this guy $1.5 million for how talented he is, then I mean, we got to do it. Next, they get the one of the most seemingly hated receivers in Philadelphia Eagles history, and Nelson Aguilar. Good player, just some drop issues. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, they acquired Corey Littleton from the Rams, and I would say that this is a huge pickup for them, but they're basically just replacing one of their interior linebackers in Tahir Whitehead because they just cut him. So I really do like Littleton as a player. As I said, I already watched the Rams last season stuff for their video, and he was a really good player, so I think he'll be really good for the Raiders as well, but it's basically just a replacement player. Jeff Heath joins the team. Once again, another really talented safety. I can't believe how many safeties they've got on this team that I'm like, wow by. Then, just because John Gruden's weird, he decides to sign Jason Witten into this tight end room that I feel like already has two very competent tight ends. So we're going to bring the old man in for some reason, just so he can end his career as a Raider instead of a Cowboy because the Cowboys don't want him anymore or something. Weird. Very strange. Next up, we've basically got a copy, like, with what I said about Derek Carr being that he throws well short passes. He wasn't completing anything crazy deep, like deep or medium last season that was making me go, wow, this guy's the answer. Or not turning the ball over a lot. We've got literally basically a copy of him in Marcus Mariota. However, when Marcus Mariota was in college, I was just a huge fan of him, so I would say that if I had to pick, if I was a Raiders fan, I would rather have Marcus Mariota starting. But I mean, honestly, it's really weird to say that when I look at a quarterback room, it seems like they've got two of almost the exact same guys. So Derek Carr's been the starter there for a while, so I'm sure he'll stay the starter. But Marcus Mariota is a very solid backup to have. I mean, very solid backup. They also got Nick Kwiatkowski, and I didn't realize it was Kwiatkowski, which I'm pretty sure I at least that's how I saw it. But I realized that today, if that's even correct, unless the site I was viewing just misspelled it, but it's Kwiatkowski. I thought it was Kwiatkowski always. He's a pretty good player. He I guess he's listed as a linebacker, but it seems like he really he did stuff all over the field last season, and I think he's a good addition for them as well. And Ken Crawley was a starting corner for the Saints for a while, so they picked him up. I think that was earlier because I think the Saints may have actually cut him at some point for some reason, but I think that was either in January or February that they signed Ken Crawley. But he could be a good cornerback addition as well, along with Prince Amukamara. They may be their new two starting cornerbacks, but they got some guys in the draft too. And speaking of the draft, we're moving on to the draft. First draft picks, Henry Ruggs III, great player. The speed is what everybody talks about, and the speed is kind of the reason that in my mock draft I said, yeah, this guy's going to go to the Raiders because he's crazy fast. But honestly, before I watched him, I was really just thinking, great, this is another speed guy. There's no way I'm going to be impressed by him. But then I actually watched him, and holy cow, he was catching contested passes, getting open, making moves in the open field. This guy is by far one of the best talents with Judy and CeeDee Lamb obviously being the other two top three wide receivers drafted. I mean, all three of those guys are what I would think would be great players. I mean, can't be sure that all three of them are going to hit, but I would definitely take a chance on any of the three of them, and I really like the Henry Ruggs pick. Next, they picked Damon Arnett at 19, which I thought they would go corner at this pick, but I mean they probably reached on this guy. He was really good at covering short routes, but eh. Um, Next up, they picked Lynn Bowden Jr. from Kentucky. I think this guy may have been. I know he was only a third round pick, but I think he may have been one of the most overhyped players in the draft. I heard a lot of stuff about him for me to watch him and just not be impressed. I mean, he seems like that guy that all these teams, I'm sure a bunch of teams got interested in him, not just the Raiders, because he could fit that Taysom Hill role of playing a ton of positions. And I just don't think he's as talented as Taysom Hill is. And I don't think that. I think teams are going to need to try to find a specific position for him and get him good at that before worrying about putting him all over the place. Next up, though, Brian Edwards, another third-round pick. The size and speed combo is great. I love it since Ruggs isn't crazy tall. He's 6'3". It makes sense to grab another receiver that complements Ruggs with some size. He's also fast too, though. So I mean, it gives me like a flash as a DK Metcalf. I really like this guy. It's just weird how many receivers in this draft are so talented. It's crazy. It seems, I mean, you look, and once again, it's just weird to talk about draft picks because it's like, I really like this guy. I don't really like Lynn Bowden, but who knows? I mean, draft picks are the craziest things to predict ever. Lynn Bowden could be the greatest player in NFL history, and Brian Edwards could not even make the team this summer. Next up, Tanner Muse. Wow, I was really surprised that they picked a safety. I hadn't looked at their draft picks, but I was just going through their off-season stuff and then the safeties they already had on their team. I couldn't believe they picked a safety. But wow, I really like his play. And I'm saying this, this safety room is probably the best safety room in the entire NFL. I watch him, and the one thing I just have to say is that there's a chance they may convert him to a linebacker because he does play really physically. And the thing that wait, I'll get to that later. But he does play really physically, and I liked how he played. Next up, John Simpson. He's a guard. He played pretty well against Ohio State University, but I don't know how to evaluate offensive linemen because he's a left guard from Clemson. See if he does anything well. And lastly, their last pick was Meek Robertson. This guy makes me realize that Mike Mayock and John Gruden are looking for guys that are either physical or playmakers, and this guy fits both descriptions, his play style, and we'll see how he translates to the NFL. The other thing about Tanner Muse, which I'm going back to picks again, that I didn't cover, is that he's like a magnet for the football. Whenever there was like a ball that was fumbled or bounced up in the air or deflected on an interception or something, it seemed to always either fall into his arms for the interception or be like the ball's on the ground and it's kicked right to him for him to pick up the fumble. It's just a turnover machine. So Tanner Muse and Meek Robertson just seem like physical guys who are also playmakers and just fit the style that John Gruden and Mike Mayock are going for. Okay. Now, the most negative part of the video probably because I don't know how this team's going to do next season, especially with who they're going to have to play. All right, so the Las Vegas Raiders opponents for 2020. As per usual, we will start within the division. We've got Denver twice, the LA Chargers twice, and Kansas City twice. I'm going to say it. Kansas City is going to beat these guys both times. They beat them very handedly the second time they played last year. I think they may do that twice again this year. Also, I think Denver will be able to even handle these guys twice. I mean, Denver's roster is just they've got guys all over the place that seem talented. Now, Los Angeles, on the other hand, I like what Los Angeles is doing, but they've either got Tyrod Taylor or the rookie Justin Herbert playing for them, and I think there's definitely more of a chance for the Raiders to beat the Chargers next season. So I'm looking at Kansas City and Denver taking both of their games against the Raiders, and they'll split with the Chargers, so this is not a good start, but I'm saying 1-5 in the division. Next, we're going to look at the rest of their home opponents. They've got New Orleans at home. Uh, New Orleans is on a completely different playing field. It's you just look at roster talent. It's not even close. I'm sorry, New Orleans is so much more talented than this team. That means they're going to be 1-6. Now the Indianapolis Colts come to town. I think Indianapolis could be a toss-up in the air game. I think that's definitely a winnable game, so I'll give them that game. 2-6 for the Colts coming to town. Now the Buccaneers come. That's going to be really tough. I'd say that they're not going to be able to beat the Buccaneers. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of... The Buccaneers do have Brady coming in, which means that they're going to have a lot of change in how they run things, I'm sure, as it's going to be different than it would be with them having Jameis Winston. So, you may say that may give the Raiders a chance, but the Raiders, literally, with how much I talked about how many changes happened this offseason for them, I can't imagine that it's going to be a very smooth transition. Like I said, down the road, this team could be looking pretty good, but I don't think this year is going to be the perfect transition year. So, I think they're going to drop to them as well, which means that, okay, so we had them losing to Denver twice, losing to Kansas City twice, losing to Los Angeles once. That's 5 losses, 1 win against the Chargers. Losing to the Saints, which gives them 6 losses. Losing to the Buccaneers gives them 7 losses, but they beat the Colts. Okay, we're at 2-7 right now. I'll keep track of it from now on. Now they're going to play Miami at home. I'll give them Miami at home. I definitely think they can beat Miami at home. 3-7, but they're playing my Buffalo Bills also, and my team is a lot better. However, Ed Oliver just got arrested today, and maybe that means if you run Josh Jacobs up the middle every single play, we won't be able to stop it. But I'm going to say that the Bills will be able to win that one. So, 3-8 for the Raiders, heading into their last 5 opponents that they'll have to head to. All right, so they've got Atlanta. They've got to go to Atlanta. They have to go to Cleveland. They have to go to Carolina. They have to go to New England. They have to go to New York. This is probably the weirdest grouping of 5 away teams that they've got that they could have had left. All these teams I feel like could have very good seasons or could have very bad seasons. New England and New York, I've been leaning towards having bad seasons. Carolina, I think mediocre, but the thing with Carolina is they're in a tough division too, so you can't even say that for sure. Cleveland, I like them improving from last season, and Atlanta, I like them improving from last season as well. So do I want to say, I don't really know if I even want to pick any of these games, but I'm sitting here and they're at 3-8 with these 5 games left. I think Atlanta, Cleveland, Carolina, New England, and New York, I think they're going to lose 3 of them. I think they could win 2, but I think they're going to lose 3 of them. I'd say the Raiders are looking at like a 5-11 season next year. And that may even, no, that's probably not generous. I'd say I'm going to put my money on 5-11, but I wouldn't say they're going to be worse than that. I don't think the Raiders will be any worse than 5-11. I think 5-11 is what I will predict them, but I think 5-11 is actually the bare minimum that they'll do performing. I don't think they would be worse than that. I don't think Gruden would let them be worse than 5-11. So yeah, this team is really weird, and for all I know, they could go 13-3 next year because there's a ton of player movement here. Marcus Mariota could be the starting QB by the start of the season, and who knows what happens there. But I'm saying 5-11 for the year. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Back of the end zone, could he get his feet down? No, it's incomplete. Fourth quarter, you've got the big lead. If you're coaching, Charles, you still taking shots like that downfield?
I'd be a little more concerned with running some clock and making sure you're taking care of the lead, because you keep flinging it around, you throw a couple of picks, you can put yourself in jeopardy.
So it's 3 more points, and that widens this thing out even further here in the fourth.
And in this league, you can never have enough points, but this widens it out, as you said, and now it's all about ball control, isn't it?
personnel sets up to kick this away. This fielded at the 2. And he'll take this across the 25. Couple extra yards up to the 27-yard line. Here comes the field general leading his offense back out there for the next possession. And that interception that ended their previous drive likely also ended any shot they had at victory.
Yeah, long road back from here, no doubt about that one. But let's face it, if you're going to go out there and compete, you want to try and end on a strong note, don't you?
Absolutely. It won't end in a victory like you said, but they can maybe take something positive out of this one. A 10-yard pickup, and it's enough for a Broncos first down. Line of scrimmage, the 37 on 1st and 10. Here's Locke. Gets it to Gordon. And he's dropped right at the 40. Gain of 3. You got the big lead defensively. Willing to give him that underneath stuff, right?
And this is why you work on your tackling. Tackle him after the catch, inbounds, keep the clock running. Just go ahead and bleed the game out that way.
And he'll be taken down across the 50 at the 45 in enemy territory. So it's Bronco football as we get your reset here. And let's see what they've come up with offensively after having time to talk it over. And now a throw on 1st down there, but it's incomplete. Another wayward pass. You know, things started out poorly in this game, and to be frank, they just really haven't gotten much better.
And all that does is embolden the secondary. They feel good about what's going on, and they just play better and better.
And he's going to have another first down as the tackle comes at the Raiders' 28. They're going to need to get up and set in a hurry. Here's Locke to throw. Looking right sideline, but it's incomplete. Offense for them has been at a premium. You wonder where plays like that have been all game long.
They're thinking the exact same thing themselves, but they're also looking forward now because now these plays are really for next week, trying to get some momentum going.
Call it a gain of 3, and all of a sudden here it's 3rd down. Clock now to throw. And my goodness, another interception. LaMarcus Joyner with a pick.
Everyone's got to be able to catch the football.
He's got daylight past the 20. And he takes this one back into the end zone, and the Raider defense delivers a score.